Nonprofits have been involved with the workers' comp system for a long time, and why not? You know, they've dealt with people that are homeless, mentally, physical challenges, and every 3 years they have to go through a rigorous certification process at a high buck value. This includes having surveyors come in, take a look at their documents, their process, interview staff, and when they make suggestions, it's expected that all the suggestions are followed through on. So we're really pleased to have Lisa Parteh with Functional Industries. We've got Lynn, Vincent with Allina Health. Some of you may remember that as Courage Center. And we've got Avivo with Erik, Aamoth, and Avivo before that, for us old timers, was Minneapolis Resource Center. Then it was Resource Center, and I don't know how long ago it changed its name to Avivo. Last year? Okay, so very recently. All right, so we've asked them, let's see here, I better get this thing set up though. So what we have here is we have a number of questions that we've asked our panel to respond to. And to start off, maybe Lynn, you can tell us what resume techniques are no longer relevant.
Well, thank you, first of all, for inviting us here. And I would say that some of the techniques that are not really relevant anymore are having that objective up at the top of the page on that resume. Also, font, really keeping an eye on the type of font that you're having your job seeker use. That would be another area.
Okay, and Erik? I'm sorry,
okay.
Were you not finished?
I was just going to say, really, there's some really small little techniques within the resume just to kind of be aware of, and that is like no double spacing. That definitely can show some age, signs of age. So just also staying really current with verbiage. I would say that at Courage Kenny we have a business advisory committee. We're always tapping into them and just making sure that we're staying up to date on some of the verbiage that's being used in the industries that our job seekers are going for. So that's also very important.
Okay. Erik?
Yeah.
Thanks also for inviting us. It's pronounced actually, Mike, Avivo, so it's
Avivo.
Brand new.
Okay.
It's like Viva Las Vegas. It means life, so we're excited about our new brand the last year or so. Well, you can learn more about Avivo from we have a table, Erik is over there, so please feel free to visit Tim and learn more about what we're doing with the organization. I think from a resume perspective, one of the things we're trying to encourage our clients, many of our clients are folks that have are basically trying to get into the workforce for the first time, or maybe get back into the workforce, and so it can be really challenging to do that. We're really focusing on profiles is a key area for our clients, and then also targeted resumes. So really putting your resume where you're having the title of your resume be focused on the job you're looking for, and then really focusing those skills up at the top so that your recruiter can see what your skills are and your experience really early on in the process. The other thing I think it's probably somewhat outdated is resume, or talking about references. It's pretty much assumed by most folks, the employers that we talk to, that references will be available, so you don't necessarily need to put references on your resume anymore.
Lisa?
So I also thank you for inviting us today. As far as resumes go, I think one of the things we've seen in the rural areas more often than not is taking off your address. Addresses are not necessary on a resume anymore, and it really helps the individual, because employers will often look at, oh, that person doesn't live in Buffalo, and then their resume gets put aside. So without that address there, it gives a person more of a chance to be considered. And then also not putting your references on your resume and making that a completely separate document that can be handed to an employer upon request.
Okay, there's always been that question about how many pages a resume should be. Should it be 1, 2, 10 to impress the employer? Does anybody have any thoughts about that?
Well, I'll tell you from a hiring standpoint, anything more than a page, I tend to only look at the first page. And that goes for a lot of employers. So as much as you can, keep your relevant things that you really, really want the employer to see on that first page, because anything beyond that, I think, does get overlooked quite frequently.
I would second that.
I agree. I think the other piece I would add is make sure that it's relevant to the work that you're looking to apply for, that it's important to put it on the resume. Sometimes people get kind of put off by the idea of what's been many years ago, but I think it's really important that if it's relevant to the work you're applying for and is building towards that next position, that you really want to make sure you include that. But one page is absolutely what we recommend to our clients.
Okay. So one of the things that we've seen is that nearly 30% of managers are millennials. You know, those are the folks that are born between 1977 and 1992. And it's said that within about 10 years, 50% are going to be managers. How has this made you change your approach, if any, to get your clients jobs? And I'll let you guys decide who needs to talk first.
Okay, I'll start. Well, I almost consider myself a millennial, so I'm kind of excited about I'm almost there. I think the key for us with our clients, the ones that are going to be working for millennials, is to really approach the person they're working with from a fresh perspective. And sometimes we get folks that are making assumptions based on their situation with their career, and that they're not going to be employable, they're not going to be able to work for companies like we have up here, and that that's going to be that their age is going to be a factor. And sometimes it is a factor. I mean, it does happen that it is a factor, but many times it's more about confidence and making sure that the person is doing a really good job of emphasizing their skills and their experience, and understanding that that supervisor has, if they're in an interview with them, that they really have an obligation to look at you and look at all your skills and your experience. And they're hiring people probably similar age to you multiple times, because obviously they can not only hire. So I think while it is a challenge sometimes for folks when it comes to trying to make sure that they understand what they need to do to get into that company, we also want to make sure our clients give themselves an opportunity to really look at it from a fresh perspective, and give that new supervisor an opportunity to work together. And many times I think that there are opportunities to find collaboration.
Yeah, and I would say that, the millennial, our experience has been is that they are looking for, does their mission line up with the organization? We're also seeing that people aren't staying in jobs. They're not keeping those jobs for long periods of time. If life changes for them, they will easily move to a different job. And that's not saying that's bad, but it's just something else that we are seeing. Let's see, I think that's about all I have on that.
So a couple of things that we've seen is it's really important to build relationships first. And so coming into that business and not just saying, hey, I have so-and-so who wants to work here, but really getting to know the business, getting to know the person that you are going to be asking for a job, and then going from there. Also highlighting the benefits to the business. What would be the benefits of hiring this person? What does it do for you as a business? And then having open and honest communication about the individual themselves and their work experience. Some of the individuals we serve have a good deal of work experience, while some have none at all. And so being able to have that conversation with the employer, and what's that going to look like for you as an employer when you hire this person, really is helpful.
Okay. So, are you finding more employers using video recruitment to attract potential employees?
In the rural areas, no. We've had 2 employers in the last year who have used the video.
And I would say that we are seeing a little bit of that, but it's more with the larger companies, your United Health Group, your some of the healthcare industries, the airlines.
I would agree. We don't necessarily see our clients having a lot of exposure to it. I have seen it a little bit more prevalent in manufacturing, because in manufacturing, as many of you know, it's really become more challenging to find employees. So the really sophisticated, progressive manufacturers are starting to really look at that as a way to try to deal with that myth of manufacturing as a dark, dirty place to work. So the best way for them to do that is to really improve their ability to show what the work would be. And so we have seen some of that happening. But for our clients who are looking for maybe again that first job or that next job where they've been out of work a little bit, it hasn't been something that's been we've seen much of.
And as a quick follow-up on that, do you find when they're doing the interviews by video, is it more by smartphone, by home computer, or kind of a mixed bag?
Again, our clients haven't had many opportunities to do interviewing. I have my previous role when I used to work at the state. I worked at Deed previous to working with Avivo. We did see it at the workforce centers where folks would do Skype interviews, especially if there was, they're going to work for a company out of state or a company maybe in greater Minnesota.
Okay, thank you. All right, do you have clients being prepared to give an elevator speech about themselves? And for you folks that don't know what that is, it's a speech that lasts generally about 25 seconds. It's about 80 words or less about why they should be hired. So your thoughts on this?
Absolutely. It's critical that people be able to do an elevator speech and really focus on what value they bring to the company. Many times our clients will be caught off guard by the fact that they have an opportunity to network with someone in a place they never thought about. Sitting and waiting for a haircut, and they're talking to somebody, and all of a sudden they're having a chat, and they're not really ready to give their elevator speech. But that moment is when they really need to have it. It's also really critical to have an informational interview, so you can really summarize what you're trying to do, but then spend most of that time, listening to that person about the company and giving a chance to get feedback from the company.
And I would agree with that. We definitely practice those elevator speeches so that it's just very, it just flows off their tongue, and they can really kind of also say, hey, here are my skills. And after listening to the conversation with you, whether it be at the salon or wherever, that, hey, I have skills that might benefit your company. So those are some things we definitely are practicing. I think it helps also with that question, tell me about yourself, can give kind of an overview of that. We really don't want people to sound robotic, that we don't want it to sound canned. We want it to sound genuine, and that we want it to really sound thought out as far as matching with what a company is looking for.
So our individuals spend 2 days actually developing a personal plan for themselves that actually highlights what their strengths, what their thoughts for jobs are, all of the different things that they want. I think sometimes with the individuals that we serve, it's so easy for people to listen to what other people are saying about them that they really don't know what they're good at, and they don't know where their skills lie. And so we try to help them pull that out so that they can really talk about themselves and talk about what they believe are their strengths and their skills as they go on. And so yes, I would agree, those elevator speeches it's practice to make them second nature for people.
Okay. So what do you do to boost your clients' salary negotiating skills?
There's a lot of different things that you can do. One of the things that we've really started taking a track for is certifications, and being able to certify people in different areas so that they have a certificate or a piece of paper to show that, yep, I do have training in this area. I did pass that training. That really helps.
So I would agree with what Lisa said. And then also with that is using resources and doing a lot of research on what a person is worth out in the industry. And that can be through Glassdoor, it can be through PayScale, it can be through just talking to people in the industry, just really knowing that industry to find out what their worth is. Also practicing that question with folks. That is a really hard one when it comes to that interview and what are you expecting. But I think with research and with helping people practice that, that they are feeling way more confident. And if they have those current certifications, they can also say, and this is what I also bring to the table.
Absolutely agree with on the training side, and in fact, our organization really encourages all of our clients to pursue training, and we have training available at our Institute for Career Education. You can learn more about that by talking to Erik over there, and I think that's really important. Also, is Lynn mentioned, making sure that you get connected in those informational interviews so you understand where the company is coming from, and so you can ask the question easier in an informational interview to say, okay, well, how much do you think I might be worth at your company? Versus it's a little bit more of a challenging question, but I would encourage all those folks to ask employers. As an employer, we don't typically like to answer that question, but we encourage all of our clients to ask it because you can learn some information about the employer about kind of where the range is. I think most employers are a little more comfortable with the range question than having it be super specific.
Okay. So does your job search training include teaching clients how to maximize use of cell phones, including the use of job search apps?
I talked to a number of our counselors about this, and we haven't got into this in great detail yet. I think the key for us with our clients specifically is really trying to make sure that they pay a little bit less attention to the apps and the job boards. There is a tendency to spend a lot of time on the apps and the job board and have a strategy where you're basically targeting lots of positions very, very quickly. And the downside is that, as many of you know, is that there's a screening process that goes into that, and then obviously it becomes a situation where you're maybe not using your time as wisely as you can. So it's great that there is so much technology out there, but we really focus our clients to say, let's focus on the top 5 jobs that are the best fits for you and really put full effort into those from an informational interview perspective, making sure you research the company, making sure that that's a good fit for you. So it hasn't really come up with our clients yet.
So I kind of looked at this question a little bit differently. I saw this question as, yeah, I agree with Erik as far as not having the pop-ups always and getting distracted. But I also looked at this question regarding time management and using their calendars, making sure they get information into their calendars, making sure that they're logging their job search efforts so that it's at their fingertips tips as they go to those trips for the interview, hopefully. And then also making sure that they keep their contacts updated. We don't want to get a call saying, oh my gosh, I don't know where this address is, or I was given a phone number and now I can't find it. So really making sure things are kept up to date. So we find that we're having to just kind of prompt them to put information into their phone. Another thing that we do is we do talk about apps. One thing I feel like as an agency at Courage Kenny, we really do look at assistive technology, and that can be anything from using an app that would help someone just kind of stay calm before that interview. And so there's a lot of different types of apps just to calm someone. So if they're getting to an interview maybe a few minutes early, putting on that app just to kind of get ready and gear themselves up. Also notes, making sure that after the interview, hey, maybe they want to jot down some notes on how that interview went so that they can then come back to us and say, hey, this is some things that they asked me I wasn't quite sure about, so that we can prep them for the next interview and they can feel more empowered, if you will. Yeah, I could go on and on about this, but okay.
So I agree with Erik and Lynn. However, I am going to say that we don't use apps to job search, but we use them for all the reasons that Lynn had mentioned, especially teaching people how to use their email on their phone. A lot of people do not understand how to check their email, how to send an email from their phone, and having that conversation about how, your phone is always with you, right? Unless you're older and you don't care about your phone like me. It's an easy, quick way for employers to be able to get a hold of you through email. However, with the apps and actually looking for employment and sending out applications, we don't encourage that. We encourage face-to-face. So you get into that business and you walk through that door, and guess what? It's a little harder to put me aside when you've seen my face than it is when you haven't seen my face and I'm just a piece of paper. So definitely the contact is more important.
Okay, so as follow-up, since I'm one of those ones that did placement 100 years ago, how many, one of the things I found was always really hard to get an injured worker after they did the interview to send a thank you note. So does anybody have their clients use the cell phone to email a thank you note to prospective employers?
We do. We do both email and we do handwritten notes. You'd be surprised how far a handwritten note will go versus an email.
Right, and we do the same thing. Sometimes that handwritten one is a little bit trickier just because you met with someone, but they're not even officed in that region and whatnot. So, yeah, we do like to have those follow-up thank yous.
I would agree. I think it's really important to do a quick email and summarize the interview and make sure that the employer hears me. But then obviously doing that handwritten note is really, really nice to be able to amplify and really get into kind of the personal reason why the interview for you seemed most beneficial.
Okay. Let's see here. So has there been an uptick in telecommuting, remote work opportunities? And if yes, what industries are you finding this in?
Well, for us, not yet much, unfortunately. We'd love to see much more. As I said, one of the challenges I think that we're having with our clients is that right now, even with a great economy, because they're maybe not at a point where they have as much opportunities to kind of negotiate, if you will, sort of higher level positions, that the employers aren't necessarily as flexible as they might be with other folks. So we have lots of people who would love to be able to do that because in part some of our clients are going through some challenges as far as dealing with daycare, transportation, maybe some mental health challenges that they're working through. And so having a flexible schedule would be helpful, but we haven't seen yet employers get to the point where that's something that they offer necessarily for some of the positions that our clients are looking for. I think the only exception to that would be is we do serve a group of displaced workers, and in some cases those can be some higher skilled people. And in those cases, especially in the IT industry, we've seen some folks who have been given that option.
I wouldn't say there's an uptick. I would say that I see it kind of ebbing and flowing depending on the labor market. I also see that more companies are willing to have people work maybe a day or two from home, but they would like that face-to-face coming into the office for meetings or whatnot. I think it depends on the industry. I am seeing and hearing of some call centers, because that's a harder one to get, Allina being one of them, where people can work from home. So it really kind of varies by industry.
I would agree with the varying by industry, but what I would say too is you don't see too many unskilled jobs being jobs that people can work from home. And so when you're looking at working from home opportunities, you're looking at jobs where people have to have higher level skills and they are being paid a greater wage for that to equate.
Okay, so I guess as a follow-up, one of the things I always think about is like customer service jobs, administrative. Back in the day, the medical transcribers were always at home. Are we seeing anything in that capacity at all, or?
Not in the rural areas. It seems people want their employees at work if at all possible, is what we see in a lot of respects.
And I guess we're seeing like some of the transcriptionists, they're working from home. And yeah, the call centers, some of them are working from home, not by no means are all of them by any means, but I am seeing more companies willing, after they've onboarded someone and they've gotten that system, that they're willing to look at that.
What does onboard mean?
Well, just, getting someone to first get the job and then to be able to learn the job. So after that training session.
Okay.
Yes, I would agree. It seems more likely after you get the position and maybe you've been there a while that you may have an opportunity. I think the other factor that I was just thinking about with this is that there have been some larger companies, I'm sure you all know, that have kind of moved a little bit away from a results work environment. And that does trickle down to other companies to say, well, why is that large corporation who was really, really gung-ho about this 5 years ago trying to pull back a little bit. You've seen that in a couple instances, recently, and I think that does make other companies say, well, if they have tried it and put all the effort into it and they're still a little bit hesitant about it, I think that has made some companies somewhat more apprehensive about understanding the accountability piece. And that's been a big challenge for some companies to make sure they have a proper amount of accountability for folks who are telecommuting.
Okay. So robotics is taking over bookkeeping, bank telling, janitorial, manufacturing, some medical procedures. With that in mind, what jobs are you placing people into where they don't have to worry about being replaced in a couple of years?
Well, I wish I knew the answer to that question. We obviously have seen huge changes there. I think for our folks, what we want them to do, again, is really encourage education and training to make themselves as valuable as possible. So we really say, hey, we understand that you have immediate needs, that you have to take care of your family, and therefore you're really going to look at that sort of initial position. And that's what a lot of our folks are in, because they're really in that situation where that's really, really important for them for the next week, next month or so. But then, what does your career look like as far as where is your investment going, and can you either come back to us for training or maybe go into training after you get to that that next position? Because the more that they have skills, especially obviously knowledge-based skills, where they're really they're being valued for their what technical skills, and also their intelligence and all the knowledge that they have. Those are we find are probably the folks who are going to probably have the better chance. Also, a lot of our folks are interested in working with people and direct service. I think it's part of the fact that many of them went through some really big significant challenges in their own life, and they want to give back. So we find a lot of people interested in the medical office and healthcare, and so that they can work with people and give back and try to do the right things for people. And so obviously, hopefully, those opportunities to work with people and have those people-centered positions, we hope will continue into the future.
Yeah, I would say the healthcare industry is one. There are some areas where it's critical. The certified nursing assistants, we've all heard that in the news. PCAs, those are going to be the jobs. They are the jobs. But other ones, there are some accounting. I see those quite frequently. As you mentioned, some of the healthcare, other healthcare, and some IT. Definitely.
For individuals who are looking for jobs and they're worried about an employer going automated where they're not going to be needed, one of the things we target is look for a smaller employer. Because smaller employers, it's going to be harder for them to automate than it is for a huge Medtronics or somewhere like that. And plus, you have an easier time of building that relationship on your way through the door than you do with a larger company.
Okay. One thing I might also note is, for you folks that are familiar with CareerWise, we've talked about that a couple times before. They actually have a thing that's called high demand jobs, which talks about careers projections from 2014 through 2024. So it's worth taking a look at that. They have like 50 careers that are expected to increase during that next time period. So something to think about. All right, so what suggestions do you have for individuals on LinkedIn to increase their personal branding?
So we don't use LinkedIn a whole lot with our individuals who are looking for entry-level positions who don't have a lot of experience. However, we do serve a great number of individuals who have a lot of experience in life, and for some reason or another, life happened and they've had to step out of the workforce, and now they're coming back. And LinkedIn has been a really great thing for them because they can really go in and target what their skills are. What we encourage is going in and looking, maybe they've been out of work for a year or two, really go in and look at how are people terming things nowadays. 2 years ago, your skills may have they use different terms for them than they use today. And so figure out what the most current language is and then update that LinkedIn and make sure that you're on there frequently. I have LinkedIn, and I'll be honest, I don't check it too frequently because I'm not looking to move jobs. But if I were, I would probably be in there every day checking and seeing who's been looking at my resume, who's been seeking people that like me for the jobs that I'm looking for.
I think LinkedIn, I get mixed reviews on LinkedIn, is what I hear. I personally do use LinkedIn, and I'm not looking for a job, but one thing I like is I like to network with people. I like to use them kind of as, hey, I have someone. Would you be willing to do a mock interview with me, with this guy? And so that has been really helpful. I also will sometimes use it to say, hey, would you be interested in joining our business advisory committee? So I use it in that way, but our clients, some of them are using it. It is a good way to network with people. As Lisa said, it's a really good way to kind of find out, well, what are some of the terms that are being used out there in the industry? Also look at sample resumes. What are people using on their resumes and how are they formatting them? So I look at it like a nice tool just to kind of help me out to see what are people doing in the industry so that I can help our clients.
I would agree. I think it's obviously important for our folks to have a complete profile, have a picture, a good picture, and then obviously have the right information to describe their work history and their skills. And it is a good place to learn, as you said, some great language there about how to really define who they are and what their experience has been, especially folks who haven't had as much experience and trying to really equate maybe some other life experience to what that might look like for a potential employer is really important. I think also to be super active, as we were just talking about, of trying to find opportunities where you can contribute and participate in LinkedIn obviously helps us from a branding perspective so that people are aware of that you're there. And I think our clients are probably somewhat surprised by the fact that there are more people than they think are going to be on LinkedIn and that they can find people that they have some association with on LinkedIn and start to develop some of those networks. The only reticence about LinkedIn that we were just talking about is that making sure that it's not a tool that you use to necessarily go reach out to a prospective employer and try to cold kind of email them and think that you're going to link in with them and they're gonna accept it and then you're going to have sort of this part of your network. Obviously, many of us do that all the time when we get LinkedIn invitations, and we may know someone who knows someone and we'll accept that invitation, but it's not gonna. You still have to go out and do the face-to-face. So in this case, what we use LinkedIn really try to encourage our folks is networking, finding opportunities where you might see somebody that you think that you want to connect with or a company you want to connect with, trying to find a person there who knows someone that you know, or someone that you know, and that you can make those connections and then reach out and start making those face-to-face contacts.
Okay. Are your clients running across more chatbots, which many of you probably know is a computer program which conducts a conversation via audio or textual methods to simulate a human talking to them when they're applying for jobs using their mobile phones or their computer? And any suggestions to maximize their responses?
I must confess, I have not heard of Chatbox. I did a little research. I have some idea what it is, but it hasn't come up with our clients.
So I'm aware of Chatbox, and I have actually used it in different realms, but not our clients, not with interviewing.
So like Eric, I had never heard of it. And I had to do a little research, and this is something that we've never run across in the rural areas.
Okay. Well, if you don't know, if you don't ask, the question is, all right. So next one on, how do you prepare your clients for behavioral assessments by potential employers wanting to hire individuals who will fit into the organization's culture? Now, as you folks may know, it's unlike a traditional job interview questions, which ask you to describe what you did in a role or to share your qualifications. These questions seek concrete examples of skills and experiences that relate directly to the position. So the interviewer will know how you handle the situation.
Oftentimes when you're looking at entry-level positions, and I'm going to use Walmart as an example, they have a pretty intensive assessment that they do during the application process, and it can be very confusing for people. The first time I had to sit down and do that online, I thought, why are they asking me the same question 10 times? But really, they've asked it 10 different ways. And for some of the people that we're helping find jobs, they don't catch that. and they won't get that. And so being able to sit down with someone and prep them as much as we can for this, and help them to know that, okay, if you see this question and it's worded this way, here's maybe another potential way they could answer or ask the question, and helping them to realize that if you answered it one way over here, you probably need to answer it the same way over here, because you'd be surprised when you sit with someone and help them through the assessments, you can have 10 different answers to the same question because they're not understanding, and that's pretty difficult. Giving them scenarios that we can work through ahead of time before they actually sit down to do the questionnaire. Sometimes for some people, it's really helpful to have a staff sit down with them and help them process each question so that they know exactly what it is that is being asked of them. I think that's a big one. Yeah.
So I would agree with what Lisa said. Some of the things that we start off with, though, is before they're going to take that type of assessment, we have them really look at the company's About Us tab on the website, if there is a website for that company, and really read over it and kind of understand that culture of what that company's about, their mission statement, how they got started, how that company got started, what their vision is. So that's kind of just a foundation of one of the things we have folks do. Another thing we do is we do prep them. One, make sure you got time, because that is frustrating, and that you might get timed out. You will get timed out. So prepping them on that. Prepping them on those case scenarios, as Lisa said, is very important to make sure that they can kind of think about that type of question and how they would respond, how they have responded. So those are some of the key pieces that we talk to people about. And I just have to say, too, I have known people who have Googled about these behavior assessments and how to answer these questions. And I'll just leave it at that.
I would agree with everything you just said. I think it's really important for people to practice those behavioral assessments. Any type of assessment is helpful for our clients to practice. Interest profiles are really important so they understand kind of where their strengths are. That's going to help them understand what examples they should really be drawing out. When they get to the interview, we really want to encourage our clients to understand the perspective of the interviewer. And when they ask a question about stating an example, they want to make sure that they respond with an example. Sometimes folks will get into, hey, I'm really good at customer service, and they'll just kind of run through all the skills they have, and the question asks them for an example. Some employers are polite, and they'll re-ask the question for an example. Some won't. And then you're necessarily not going to have a strong answer to that question if they asked you for an example. So having that example and being able to state in the example what was exactly the behavior and kind of walking them through the steps that takes, which for some people you gloss over many of the things that you did in the project that you're doing. For our clients that have more challenges when it comes to a non-traditional work experience, they really need to be able to take that to a step further and answer a question about their life that relates specifically to the position, which can be challenging. So I wasn't working here, I was in a volunteer experience, or I was home with my children, and here's what was happening. And they have to state how they were able to, and for them, that seems very bizarre, that it's not really a work answer, but for the employer, they're looking for, how did you set up, if you're gonna plan a trip and it's really gonna be extensive, whatever it might be, how do you set up how you would do that? What goes through as far as the how steps you're taking to make that happen? And so it's trying to convince them that the more that they can show how they think, how they plan, how they organize, that's really what the employer is looking to do. And then also, obviously, if there's specific skills or, but it's really, some folks tend to end up with too much what answers kind of in those situations. And what they really want them to focus on is how. And so I think that's an area we really focus our folks with on coaching, is making sure they understand what is the interviewer asking for. The other piece of that is understanding, we talk about the company, and what the company's perspective is. And some companies are really mission driven. I was talking to a company recently who was really mission driven. And when they asked the question about being mission driven and giving me give an example of how you're mission driven, they were really looking for a mission driven example, because mission driven is really critical to the culture of the company. So as we talked about before, that's really important to understand what is the company's perspective on not only the behavioral assessments, but also on that interview.
Well, and ironically enough, our next question goes to that, which is, do you have your clients research prospective employers before job interviews? And if yes, what specifically do you have them look at to set them apart?
Well, first it goes back to what we were talking about before, that we really try to encourage our folks to not focus on that next job that they can find online as quickly as they can, because that tends to really wear them out when they're just applying for jobs. And that's why it's really important for us to spend some time trying to educate them about the job search process. So initially they understand this is what the best approach is for me to do. And once they can get that, and they understand to focus and really have discipline on which positions they're looking for, and then it's about, okay, I should spend the time on the company website initially, obviously, to get some background information. You can read reports, you can read news information, which is critical. You can read budget information. There's all kinds of information on a company website. That's a good start. Also, we talked about before, informational interviews are critical when it comes to getting information about the company. What is the company's culture? What do the employees like being in the company? Are there changes in the company that are going forward? And ultimately, we want to find with our employee or our clients is to find challenges that the company and specifically the position is having, and be prepared to address those challenges in the interview. And if we find that if our clients are prepared to say, I realize that this is an issue you're having with multiple issues with turnover, and you're not necessarily having your employees be able to be there on time, I want to let you know that I will be there on time. I have a really strong track record of being, somebody you can count on, and I'm reliable. Okay, well, now you're solving a challenge that I'm having. That's really important. So that's also a key thing, I think, when it comes to preparation, is understanding what the company's looking for, and then really being ready to talk about that specifically and what value you bring to the company when you're in that interview.
Well, I think Erik really covered a lot on that one. So I would agree with that. Research, as he said already, is very important. And that's just going to the company website and looking at the news articles, as he said. And if by any chance there's someone who works at the company and somehow we've made that connection that way, or if they know someone that works at the company, to be able to sit down or just even have a brief phone conversation, just to kind of talk maybe about the culture, about things that are going on in the company, getting a different type of perspective can also be helpful.
When you're working in a more rural area and their employers are smaller, 9 times out of 10, one of our employees has gone out to your company, and we have talked to someone, we've gotten a tour, we've gleaned information. So sometimes we are the best source of information for the people that we are trying to help get a job. And we can, if they have further questions, we can always point them to the right person in the company. We can help them figure out how to ask that question, who to ask, when to ask. Sometimes during the middle of the interview is not the best time to ask. So yeah.
As a follow-up on that, Glassdoor talks about how they talk about salary and people's inside interview perspectives of having worked at the company. Do you guys put much stock into that?
We do. We use Glassdoor, as well as Indeed also has reviews on their website, and we utilize both of those.
We do, but I always think of that employee that was disgruntled and has to, say something bad. So we do talk to our clients, our job seekers, that just because it got a 3-star doesn't mean necessarily that this is a company you shouldn't apply for, and really factoring that in with that disgruntled worker.
I agree. Definitely want to, it's information that's useful to pay attention to, but obviously take it with a bit of a grain of salt. That you want to make sure that you understand the whole situation going with the company. And again, the best way to do that is to try to find folks that work at the company or work with the company.
Okay. All right. Do you have clients do volunteer work? If yes, what benefits do you see, if any? And part of this is kind of a question that goes along with, there was a 2013 nonprofit quarterly news letter that talked about the fact that volunteer work was worth $22.14 per hour.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Volunteer work is really, really critical, especially folks, as Lisa mentioned, that who maybe had been out of work for a bit of time, and just whether it's volunteer work or whatever they were going through, maybe there was a health issue or trying to make a determination as what the right information is to provide to a potential employer. And my advice has always been to our staff and to our clients is to be as honest as you can, and that makes a difference, because gaps in resumes tend to, even if they can't ask questions, they tend to start to think about things, and you want to be able to say, hey, this is why this happened, and I did this volunteer opportunity, and it's been a great opportunity at my kid's school, and here's what I did. Again, that explain exactly what you did, what barriers you had, what challenges you had, how did you overcome those barriers and challenges, can be really important. The other thing, volunteer work many times is a great way to network, great way to find people who you typically haven't been connected with. No clients who got positions because they were in volunteer work either with the company or with somebody who knew the company, and the person said, hey, this person's really, really outstanding and you really should take a look at them, and then they were given an opportunity to do some networking within the company. And so volunteer work. The last thing it does for our clients is that obviously some of them are a very difficult, dark place in their life. And having the opportunity to have a schedule, to get up every day and say, here's what I'm going to do today. And obviously, along with job search, which many is a grind. It's really, after a while, it's really a grind to just do job search every day, right? So to have an opportunity to split up their day and be able to look forward to a really fun volunteer experience is a good way for them to kind of continue to, maintain their mental health.
Some other things it provides, confidence building.
Yes.
It also, I look at it like work hardening. So again, getting up and having a place to go, being able to work with a volunteer coordinator, possibly that says, hey, I understand that you can't maybe put in more than 4 hours initially, but I'm fine with you increasing those hours, and that is very priceless, is to be able to have that kind of work hardening. Also those development skills, been out of the workforce for a while, and so gosh, the cobwebs are kind of there, and being able to really use those skills. So not only work hardening physically, but mentally, cognitively. We see people who just, we have a wonderful volunteer program, and some of the things that we see from folks is just their confidence and how they're able to just really, I almost want to say soar. They are ready to start hitting the pavement, if you will, for looking for a job after doing some volunteering, more so than they had before they started that. So
I would agree with everything Erik and Lynn said. I think that volunteer positions are really good opportunities for people to be able to get into a company and learn more about it, and learn more about positions that company might have, and what that would mean for them. I can think that I want to be a nurse's aide all day long, but I've never seen what a nurse's aide actually does. And for me to go in and volunteer at a nursing home and actually see what these individuals do for their job is a lot more meaningful than just sitting down and looking it up on the internet. Two, there's a lot to be said about developing those relationships with employers, and I think volunteerism is a really good way to do that. We talked a little bit about individuals not knowing what their skills are and not knowing what they're good at, and being able to volunteer, you're not being judged on how well you do the job, but it really gives you an idea of, hey, I am really good at talking to people, or I am really good at leading things. And so being able to pull out a few more skills and develop a few more skills that would be transferable to a resume are really great opportunities when you're looking at volunteer experiences.
if I can just add, and sometimes things may be challenging in a volunteer experience and feedback may be given, but that is an opportunity too for some growth. And so I think too, volunteering, I think sometimes people think, oh, okay, they're volunteering, that's just it. No, they're going to get some feedback as well in those volunteering situations too. So I think that's really important as well.
I think too, to kind of piggyback on that, you know, when people have been out of a job for a period of time, not only do you need the money to pay bills, but there's always that need to give back. And volunteering is a way to give back on the front end of things, but even when you're working, you're giving back. And so I think the volunteering and the actually having a job can provide a lot of the same feelings and things that people need.
Okay, are you finding that more employers are using Facebook to post job openings? Back in 2015, the Pew Research said about 55% of recruiters were using that.
Yes, yes, yes. Especially if it's small employers. You'll find a lot of mom and pop employers using Facebook. It is a great way to make connections. And it's, to me, just about everybody we serve knows how to use Facebook. Not everybody knows how to use Indeed or use LinkedIn. And so sometimes it's easier to get them connected through Facebook to different groups in their communities where they can start looking for jobs and scrolling for jobs.
So we're not seeing so much with Facebook, but I would agree with you when you're saying the small companies, like the roofing companies, you know, and those types of positions.
Yeah, I think the challenge with Facebook for some of our clients is just understanding again that if you're not having a specific strategy that you're focused on a group of companies, you may miss the fact that, you know, there's a great company, at least as Lisa just said, that, you know, maybe that's smaller, that's where they're going to post their position. They may do some other things, but that might be one of their key areas. So if you already knew about that company or you knew about groups of those companies, you're more likely to invest your time into seeing that position because you're developing, as we talked about, that relationship ahead of time. So the more that our clients can develop a relationship with a company ahead of time and understand that those positions might be coming available, easier for them to kind of keep track of those positions. So I think the key is for us is to make sure that they understand that that's way more beneficial again than trying to search online, because the challenge is that it's so if a company posts it and they're smaller in Facebook, it can be, you know, you may miss it. So that's why we want them to be much more focused on trying to focus in on the right companies, and then therefore they're going to make sure that they do that. But it is a good way. We're also seeing people who are starting to post on Facebook for their friends, so that, you know, I work at a company and my company has a position, so I'm going to post that on Facebook for my friends, so that my friends can see that I'd like you to come work with me at my company. We're starting to see more and more of that, especially with some of the younger generations.
I was just going to kind of second that I see a little bit of that as well.
I would say one of the main things that we see on Facebook is its entry-level positions. When you're talking about positions that require a lot of skill and experience, you're not going to see those on Facebook. So we'll see things like PCA, janitorial, trying to think of other things, a lot of customer service jobs, things like that.
Okay. So now, do any of you work with your clients to clean up their online presence? Doing something like defensive Googling?
All the time. Regularly. We are not only having our clients clean up their Facebook, we are also having them Google themselves. We have had situations where people are surprised what they're finding, and they have said, yes, this is true, or maybe this isn't true, but they need to be able to talk about that potentially. So some of those are, regarding legal issues. Some of them are regarding just some bad press and how are they going to handle that. So we do that regularly. We also ask the job seeker to be editing their Facebook, to really be careful what they're putting in there, watching the pictures, not putting inappropriate pictures in, and just really being mindful of that and how they may be conceived out in the community. So, perceived.
The biggest challenge here for us in this area is with our younger clients. We have some young adults who obviously that's sort of their lifeblood, is to communicate with their friends via social media, and they want to talk about and kind of pour their hearts out to, their friends on social media. And at times, obviously, that conversation may be misinterpreted. I think the other piece that we're seeing some challenges is obviously it's a very we're in a polarizing time right now. So people may feel strongly about an issue or something going on in politics that they really want to, speak out for or against. And we try to encourage our folks that sometimes, companies are going to be somewhat leery of the fact different backgrounds and sort of the way and because you have to work with folks in the company who've got all different types of views. So and then I think the other piece that we just talked about is cleaning up and making sure the history, making sure they pay attention to people that are tagging them. Obviously, that becomes somebody sends something and they tag you, and then or that you're sending something publicly, or that your friend is sending someone and it's going to you as in publicly. And unfortunately, some folks have had some issues with that, and they've learned from that. And then the other piece for us is just a step back. For some of our clients, they're not as familiar with the social media and how it actually works. So we have to educate them to make sure they understand, what is the real impact of, being on social media, and how do they make sure that they do that in a way that's, going to be smart.
I wanted to also mention that we talked to them about their settings in that, so let's make this private and let's not have this go public. That is really another key piece as well.
So something to take into consideration, research has shown that millennials and Zs use apps and Facebook and things like that the most. When they were polled and asked if they would quit their job if their employer told them that they had to delete their Facebook app, they said yes. They admitted to checking their Facebook app 50 to 60 times a day. Okay. That is really tough to work around when you're working with millennials and below. You find that they're on their phones continually and not focusing on the job search. So I think more of the conversation is around how are we using Facebook and how are we, and I like to tell people, if you're going to an employer and you're asking for a job, they can easily pull up Facebook and look you up. And I have managers who do that all the time with people, and it's that first impression. It was always when I first started interviewing for jobs, it was the first impression on how you looked and how you carried yourself. Now it's a social impression. So those are really important things to consider.
Okay, well, I think we kind of touched upon that people really aren't doing any videoing at this point, so we'll jump on to the next one. Are you using platforms such as Dropbox or Google Drive to send cover letters and resumes? I think we may have already answered that, but...
We do not. We just use your plain old Microsoft Office and do our stuff and then send it via email.
I would say that we have, we do have people who put their resumes on Google Drive. They have it with them then, always. It's available. So that is something that we do. Yeah.
We try to encourage our folks, to use Google Drive. I think some of them, there are a few that use the Dropbox, but to Lisa's point, it's mostly folks just using Office. Again, a lot of our people are trying to really improve their and develop basic computer skills. So it's a big step for them to go from that to kind of being much more technologically proficient. So it takes phases of them learning kind of what exactly is involved with all the technology, starting sometimes from fairly early beginnings and then kind of moving up to the point where they can. But over time, it is nice. I think they figure out that when they're able to move around, that it's nice to be able to have their resumes and the cover letters stored in one place.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of free job search apps that are out there. It kind of sounds like that not everybody is using them on there, but as kind of a review, there's the ones that, the ones that are out there. You've got Indeed, you've got Jobs by Career Builder, LinkedIn Job Search, of course, Monster, Research, Snag-a-Job, Switch, ZipRecruiter, Glassdoor, and Good and Company. Is there any that you would recommend that your clients do use?
I think we do recommend that they make sure they have an aggregator, something like Indeed, so they don't miss anything. So they want, instead of having to necessarily go from job board to job board, which can be tedious, having an aggregator that you make sure that somebody that captures, most of all the jobs is helpful. But as we talked about, we just want to make sure that they have discipline when it comes to doing that, so they don't necessarily spend too much time on it. But obviously, trying to be familiar with the important sites that do aggregate all the positions, and so you make sure you're aware of it. And obviously, we want to make sure that we do that with our clients too. Our counselors are constantly, sending them hopefully leads in the area that they've already been, talking about and coaching them with, so that that's just a matter of trying to follow up with them with finding the job on the job board.
Yeah, we use Indeed and Minnesota Works. I really like the filters that they have on there, as well as being able to have those alerts. So that's really helpful.
We recommend Indeed. A lot of that is because we utilize Indeed through our HR software. We get an automatic connection to that, and so if somebody applies, boom, we have the application within seconds after they hit send. And so we do recommend Indeed. It's pretty easy to use for people at any skill level, as well as Minnesota Works. But we're really kind of the boot to the ground newspaper. Visiting employers is really what we are recommending, because that seems to be how people get jobs the quickest.
Okay, any other thoughts as we're starting to close this down? No? All right, I'll open up to any questions at all? All right, the question was, how does the referral process work for workers' comp clients to your facilities?
So typically what happens is someone from the workers' comp organization will call our organization and say, hey, we have this person who was injured, trying to get them back to work. Maybe we don't have anything, or the company doesn't have anything that they're currently working for that we can put them back to work. What can you do for us? And then we talk about, what are their limitations? What kind of accommodations might they need? And then really talking about what it is we can do for them. And if there is something that we can legitimately do, then we work with our HR department to set that up with workers' comp.
So the process is, we have a service coordinator, and the QRC would contact our service coordinator. We then would need to get approval from the claims adjuster. Once the approval is made, and we have a letter that we write out, and it specifies, exactly the date and when we would do the various type of service. We have a variety of services, just a little quick marketing thing on that if I can. We have clinical evaluations. We have a program called Work Readiness, and that's a 4-week-long program. It is a volunteer program, so it's not paid, but what it is it's an opportunity for someone to come in and work in doing some volunteer types of tasks, typically clerical, although we do have something where we have people who can do grounds maintenance, and we also have some light janitorial. So if someone needs to have some movement and they don't want to have any kind of clerical or sedentary work, they could do that. Another program we have, of course, our placement program. We have 2 other programs that are new to us, and that is one, it's called post-secondary navigation. And what it is it's for those individuals who want to go back to school and they're trying to navigate the computer system in the school. They haven't been in school for a while, or maybe never, as far as a secondary education. And so it is a different kind of world out there. We have a lot of questions about just navigating the D2L program, their portal software program that they use at the colleges. And so just being able to also hook up with disability services and what kind of accommodations they can ask for. I could go on and on about that. I won't. We also have a career navigation program, and that is also to kind of help with those apps that people are having problems with, as well as really defining what they want to get into. But anyways, so after we get approval from a claims adjuster, we then go ahead and start with one of those services.
I'm new to Avivo, so that's a great question. I need to go back and really research that more carefully. So I've only been there 3 months. I'll plead a little bit of ignorance. But in general, similar to what Lynn was just saying, obviously get connected to one of our folks who would then kind of understand what information is needed. One of the things we're trying to improve on with Avivo is that we are a fairly large organization. We serve 19,000 people. We have 350 employees. And part of what I'm trying to work on is trying to make sure that we are a little more, as Mike said, we've had many different name changes over the years, but we want to really improve that external and internal referral process so that it's really much more simplified. But and so in general, what we would do is that we have some folks that can work with folks with disabilities or folks that have been injured and trying to get them, retraining and reemployment. The best way to do that is to contact, basically our director of disability services, and she can help to kind of figure out where we need to go. But in the future, I think we will move to a much more Avivo wide strategy where it's much simpler for us to have a point of contact throughout the organization, and we need to move towards that.
Okay, I'm looking at the time, so we'll open it up for one last question. For questions afterwards, please feel free to meet with them. One of the things, too, that I want you to really recognize, as QRCs, it's really easy to go ahead and send a file over to the job search vendor and say, take care of this. And there's a lot more to what they do to help get people back to work. So I hope this has been enlightening. Last question.
I'll make this really quick. I'm just very curious, as being a placement specialist with the department for 22 years, do you customize your programs or recommendations for individuals at all? When you talk about the social media, the resources that are available, one of the challenges we face regularly is the age of the client. Many people don't use computers, aren't comfortable with computers, aren't willing to learn computers. So when you talk about Facebook, LinkedIn, all of those things, is there things that you typically do differently with individuals who perhaps may be older, that aren't willing to kind of come outside of the box a little bit and utilize those resources?
Sure, I'll start. I mean, I think, and if I didn't say this, I'll make sure I emphasize it with all of you. Every single person that works with our organization, it's a customized approach. It's all individualized. We want to make sure that we have a person sit down, talk with one of our team members, and really go through kind of what is their circumstances. We serve people from, as I said, at-risk youth to seniors, people with disabilities, to men and women who are going through significant mental and physical challenges. So you have to have a customized approach and make sure that you understand where they're coming from, and then every recommendation is customized as well as to what we think is best for them. What's kind of neat about our organization is we have some grants available, and so it allows us to be flexible so that we don't necessarily have to say, okay, well, you're not eligible for this program, so we can't serve you. We really want to be totally holistic so that if you have somebody that you want to send to us, we will figure out a way to serve them no matter who they are, no matter what their circumstances are. And it's absolutely important that it's individualized. As you're right, some folks are in a very, very different place. And we've got, high school kids who are looking at just going back to school. That's the number one thing. So we talk about making sure that they're going to class, making sure that they're, that they're working with their families to make sure that they're doing what they need to do at home, making sure that they can get that part-time job. So it's versus a range of people who are higher level skilled people who have, been in their career or 10 years. We have a company we're working with right now, and they're looking for very, very high-level jobs. So it has to be a very, very customized approach.
So yeah, we look at whole person care. That's something that we totally have as our mission statement. And one of the programs that we developed, it was called Career Navigation, and it was designed and it birthed out of exactly what you're talking about. The elderly who are not used to the technology. The story behind that whole thing was we had a client and she was on a job search. She had a flip phone. She didn't know how to turn it on and off. And so the only way she'd turn it off is flip it shut. And it was like, okay, but we got a lot of work here. And so it really was meant to sit down with her and explain it to her. And with that whole situation, there was a lot of other barriers in her life too. And so really having that whole person care, that looking at her housing situation and looking at all of the resources that we also had to pull out and provide to her. As a large organization, I think that's something that we really do have the opportunity to provide by just talking to the experts within our company.
Going back to what Erik was saying, we deal with so many different individuals on so many different levels of need, levels of ability, whatever it might be. If we don't customize, we are not going to be in business. Pure and simple. We're not here just to find people jobs. We're here to find people the right job. And so we have to customize in order to do that.
Okay, well, I've got 10:30 on my watch, so at 11:45 we will resume. Thank you very much.